Hello everyone and welcome back finally to another Specimen Saturday. So I know it's been a couple weeks since we've had a Specimen Saturday. It has been very busy and I've been a little bit under the weather, but we have finally got some time to do a Specimen Saturday and I'm really excited to share some of my specimens with you. So today we're going to be looking at animal architecture with wasp nest, and that may seem kind of weird to some people, but and we have birds showing up to eat the birdseed behind us. But animal architecture is a really fascinating subject. It covers everything from those coral pieces that we've looked at in the past. You're looking at animal nests. When people think of animal architecture, they often think of beavers. So beavers building dams, that's another example. Or what about ant nests or termite hills? All of those things are examples of animals creating their home. A spider's web is another example of animal architecture. It is everywhere all around us, and it is very fascinating to see how there are creatures out there who will take nothing and turn it into their own home. And that's something I think a lot of us don't really appreciate enough, is it's not just humans who build our own homes. Even creatures who don't perhaps build will find a den, or they'll dig and create tunnels. They will find some sort of way to designate their home environment and to make it as safe for them and their young as they can. Some creatures, they never have homes. Some fish actually do find their specific homes in coral reefs and will guard it. But today we're going to be looking at insects, and we're going to be looking at two types of wasp nests. And I was really excited to find these specimens actually. They're from my personal collection of specimens that I keep to show off to everybody and to show them examples of animal architecture. So these are them right here. And what we have here is a wasp nest that I actually got last autumn, and you should have heard my wonderful darling when I wanted to bring this home from the park, and he thought that was nuts because he was so worried that there were still going to be wasps active and inside. But this is a paper wasp nest. So there are many different species of wasp. They include pollen wasp, paper wasp, they include mud daubers. I'm sure many of you, especially if you are from the South or you're anywhere in the United States, are familiar with yellow jackets and the concern that yellow jackets are, because they're going to sting you and they really hurt when they sting you. But there's several different species, and they don't all build nests or all build nests the same way. And each nest is actually very unique and different, and I'll show you guys that in a minute. But this is a paper wasp nest, and it's very easy to see where it gets its name because it has kind of like a paper-like fiber that they've actually made out of their own saliva, their own material, and have turned into this beautiful nest. And I left it up on a tree branch for a while. You can see over here the way it's attached to the tree branch. They just worked with the leaves. They incorporated the leaves in as part of their nest. But it's just fascinating. You can see the patterning to the different layers of mud, the different layers of spit and nutrients that they used. And some people would think, oh, that's so gross. Why would an animal use spit to make its nest? Well, that's practical. Think about it. If you are an insect, you don't have hands. You can't pick things up too easily. And what better thing to use than saliva, which has a sticky substance in it, and combine it with a little bit of mud, mix the two together, and you create your own paper plaster. So I've always found this to be very fascinating because it does look just like paper. And it's not very delicate. It's pretty sturdy. It is a little bit delicate. Like you could tear it just like fragile paper if you wanted to. And if you look inside, let's turn it into the sun so you guys can see a little better. If you look inside here, you can actually see the little spots where they would have kept their babies. So this is where, like, here is an unhatched larva right here. I bet there'd still be a larva inside there if I peeked. I haven't messed with this one too much because I want to keep the entire specimen as intact as possible. But you can see the little individual cells, and those are where they would have had their larva and where they would have hatched out of. And this nest would have had a big colony of wasps tending to it, and it would have had a queen who was in charge of the colony, kind of like bees, dictating where everybody went and what everybody did, and she would have been inside the nest most of the time, and everybody else would have been going out and coming in, very similar to a bee nest, except that you don't really have like a hierarchy, and then after everyone's done, because after fall comes, the wasps all leave. The queen spends her time alone. She doesn't stay in this nest. They all abandon the nest in fall once everybody hatches and they get out of here. And they all go their own way. And the queen will actually go and find a little spot to brood over winter by herself. So they won't stay in here. They abandon the nest. And that's why after I knew it was abandoned, we went over and I collected it, because I really, really wanted to have this beautiful specimen so I could show off just the stunning beauty and the unique nature of this piece of animal architecture, because this is something that animals built. Not only animals, but insects. This is something that insects built so that they could have their own home and their own enclosure, a safe place to keep their young, a safe place to raise their young, and I think that's really fascinating. And so if you see these out in like the forest or somewhere in your yard, you don't normally have to be too worried, because paper wasps are not particularly aggressive unless you attack them or you attack their nest, and that's when they'll be aggressive. Now there's always the risk that you could have a very dangerous allergic reaction to paper wasps, or any wasp, any insect, if you get stung. So if you know that you might have a bad reaction, it's safer to have it removed, call somebody to get it removed, see if you can get them transported elsewhere. But if you're not worried about getting stung, and again, paper wasps are usually, we were walking right by these guys and we were walking right by another nest in the park, and they're usually so laid back that as long as you don't swat at them, as long as you don't swat at the nest especially, they're just going around their business, constantly going in and out. Normally this is enclosed a little bit more, and they'll have a little opening right here, so you really don't have to worry about these guys too much. And wasps, even though they have such a negative connotation, wasps are really important pollinators, and they actually eat pests. So if you have a garden and you want to keep garden pests out of your garden, then keeping wasps in the yard is a great thing, because they actively eat garden pests. So yeah, don't be too worried if you see one of these nests set up, unless you know that there's a medical condition in your friends, your family, that you need to be careful of. Mostly these guys serve, just like bees do, as being a vital pollinator and an excellent predator on garden pests. So excellent to have around. And then this much smaller piece right here is actually another wasp nest, and this is a mud dauber nest. So just as these guys kind of took a little bit of mud and saliva and they made this paper, these guys make a harder nest. So this is more like ceramic. This is kind of like a ceramic piece. It is made out of mud, but you can see it has the same patterning of slow pieces being gently added to over time. And so paper dauber, or mud daubers, excuse me, are another type of wasp, and they also build with mud, but they make it a lot thicker. So they use their mud and saliva. This is very hard. I could break it pretty easily if I smashed it, but this is really, really hard, and it's just like taking a piece out of clay that you've put in the kiln out and having a little piece of a ceramic. And that makes sense because this has been sitting out in the sun. But mud daubers are really interesting because they tend to live in smaller groups. Usually you'll have a female, maybe a couple, who will come over, and the males sometimes will help in some species. And it's a smaller, kind of almost family group that will build this nest, and mostly the female, and then she will lay her eggs in the back. And then what these guys do, and it's really interesting, is they collect spiders. And certain species love certain sizes and species of spiders, so they'll be very, very picky about what species and what size, especially orb weavers, crab spiders, etc., that they want to eat. So they will go through and they will build these. I'm going to turn it over, see if I can find some. There we go. And they'll put their larvae in the back, and then they will go out and they will go get spiders, and they will paralyze the spiders and bring them back and pull them into their tubes to feed the larvae. So they will go and collect tons and tons of spiders, put them in here. You can see some preserved spiders in the back corner back here. Those aren't larvae, those are actually dead spiders that these guys will put in for their babies. And that's just so fascinating to me. So once they're ready to come out, then there's weak spots where the larvae will just push their way out. A completed mud dauber nest will usually have an end cap on one piece. This piece is a piece that got destroyed when maintenance came along. So I don't know, it looks like they had some successful hatchings from these holes, but I don't know if they did or not, or if that's just like afterward. And yeah, then the babies will just like pop right out, and they will have had their spider feast waiting for them so that they can come out ready to fly, ready to be adult wasps. But mud daubers are proving to be very common here. As you guys can see, there's another mud dauber nest, and we actually did kind of gently poke that one when the wasp wasn't inside with a stick to break it, because we didn't want the wasp like directly on our deck at that point, because it looked like a type that could really hurt you if it stung. And imagine my shock and surprise when I bumped that with my bamboo stick and spiders poured out of it. I just about freaked out. But there's a mud dauber nest there, and then there's another one down here. So as you can see, they are all over the place. And I think this one is done. I've left it alone. After I learned more about them, I left that one alone for a long time. And I'm pretty sure that one is done, so I'm probably going to try to pop it out very gently and add it to our little specimen collection over here so that we can show people in the future what it looks like when animals build their own homes. So there we go. A little bit of animal architecture just to get your Saturday looking pretty interesting. And I hope you guys have learned a little bit more about wasps, because a lot of people are just absolutely beyond terrified about them. And as long as you don't mess with them, it's just like the way people used to be terrified of bees, and now we try to respect and admire them for their vital part of the ecosystem that they play, of being pollinators. And wasps take it a step further, and they even eat prey pests that can destroy gardens and destroy agriculture. So they're not completely bad. As always, be careful if you are, have a medical condition and you just cannot risk being stung. But if they're in an area that they're not going to bother you or your family or your pets, try leaving them alone, because they're probably not going to be there as long as you think, and they're going to do a lot to help the local environment. So I hope you guys have enjoyed, and I have loved showing off my specimens too, and I can't wait to do it again next week, and I'll see you guys then. Remember, everybody, stay curious, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye!